Hey everyone, it's Movie Lover 120 here, and I'm here with a brand new horror movie review. Yeah. And this horror movie review is going to be for an Eli Roth movie. And no, it's not Hostel, part 1 or 2, and it's definitely not Green Inferno. Remember that? And this movie review is going to be for his very first horror movie, one that started his career, Cabin Fever. Now, before I explain, this is probably the only movie that I own, and easily the only movie that I like in this series. So let me say this. Before Cabin Fever came out, it was screened around September 2002. The word in the horror world was that Cabin Fever was one of the most gruesome, bloodiest, scariest, funniest, and craziest horror movies ever. It was well received at the screening festival it was first screened at. Quentin Tarantino loved it and said Eli Roth was the next generation of horror, and would even go on to work with him on those Hostel movies as an executive producer. Then, of course, now Quentin Tarantino wasn't the only horror director who loved it. Lord of the Rings director Peter Jackson, who also directed some turn-off-brain gory horror films like Brain Dead or Dead Alive and Reanimator, also loved the movie and screened it for his Lord of the Rings cast while he was filming Return of the King. He even paused filming Return of the King so he could screen the whole cast and crew Cabin Fever in his own private screening of the film. So yeah. Then it was eventually released in September 2003. Critics and audiences, not critics, not just critics, moderately received it with a 62% on Rotten Tomatoes, so it was somewhat semi-positive received. And it was more split with audiences. Audiences said they enjoyed it as a fun little flesh-eating virus flick, horror flick set in a cabin, kind of with a good throwback to those cabin horror movies. Or other, and there was another fraction of audiences that said it was just nothing but an exploitative gory raunch fest, just with a bunch of unlikable douchebag characters. Yeah. That was pretty much everyone's reaction to it. Me personally, I'm among the crowd who loves this movie. I consider it hilarious, brutal, gory, scary at times, even a little bizarre. Now, when it comes to Eli Roth, with the exception of Rob Zombie, Eli Roth is one of the more divisive horror directors. Basically, because the tide of controversy his two Hostel movies ignited easily overshadowed this first feature. There's a lot of people that seem to just hate the work of Eli Roth, mainly just because he relies on gore and nudity much like Rob Zombie does. Although, to be fair, Eli Roth's not quite as vulgarity-inducing as Rob Zombie's movies always are. Here's the difference. Eli Roth has like a few good movies. Rob Zombie only has like 2 good movies and that's it. Which were House of Corpses and Devil's Rejects. The rest were just basically stinkers. Well, Lords of Salem was okay really, but still wasn't that good. I don't think he's an amazing director or anything, but I do enjoy this movie and Hostel, which I also own quite a bit. Well, the first one anyways, I enjoy. Because his films are not trying to be Oscar winners, they're just stupid, cheesy B-movie horror films full of graphic violence that aren't meant to be masterpieces. They're just fun little turn-off brain flicks, which I could appreciate, kind of the lowest form of entertainment. Roth's strength as a writer-director in his surreal sense of humor and ability of craft sickening horror set pieces, and that's why Cabin Fever is really worth checking out if you see it. The redneck characters are bizarre enough to be humorous. Like, which character would you probably prefer? The blonde-haired kid who screams about pancakes and does inexplicable karate moves, or the local deputy Winslow, aka Party Cop, who just moans about parties in the face of all sanity? And then, of course, the kindly, folksy shop owners who engage in unexpected racist dialogue, a gag that has a hilarious payoff at the end. And we even have Roth's aggravating cameo that gets a laugh or two. And later on, this harmonica man and resident deer appear to choruses of laughter, and the horror sequences, they're usually gleefully nasty, like there's this bowling alley massacre or Strong turning on the trail of invading rednecks. The result is all, man, we know 70s slash 80s sleaze exploitation horror films. And there's others that are body horror films like. There's also Angela Badalamenti's score, which is unnerving and gets under your skin the same way this movie's disease does. Although Roth's direction is pretty stylish. Yes, all the songs are usually on the soundtrack are all from Last House on the Left too. In any movie, in a Roth film, it's basically like a callback to films like Texas Chainsaw Massacre or Friday the 13th Part 2. Luke, and there's a screwdriver in the ear, which is Dawn of the Dead, bombing on somebody, The Fly. The movie even has the Batcave putting in a cameo. Not to mention the entire premise was a considerably amount to The Evil Dead. Even like this was also pretty much influenced by Evil Dead, since I think Roth's also a big fan of that movie. So this one makes sense. Oh yeah. And there's this one death near the end, which happens to one of the characters I'm going to mention. At the very end of the movie, that's actually a big throwback to Night of the Living Dead, the original. But anyway, I think those were all the good qualities. Now, there are quite a few bad qualities. Is this movie really like a masterpiece? Like 9 out of 10 worthy? Well, no. There's still a number of bad qualities I'm going to mention, which is usually Roth's biggest problem in every one of his movies. The dude is bad at doing one thing: writing genuine, likable characters. All of his characters always just come off as simple sketches in every one of his films. At worst, they're just intensely unpleasant jerks. In both Cabin Fever and Hostel, it's usually what they are. In Cabin Fever, characters are separated into two types. There's writers Strawn and Jordan Ladd, who play the two main characters. There's Paul, I forget the other Jordan Ladd's character's name, but they're defined solely by their relationship to each other. Strawn's Paul is trying to transfer from childhood friend to serious romantic partner to Ladd's Karen. I remember what her name is. Her name's actually Karen. And that's pretty much it. They're not really much memorable characters. They're just kind of characters just trying to have a romantic relationship. That's pretty much it, but they're probably the more tolerable of all the douchebag characters, really. Their personalities pretty much kind of morph to the story's whims, and the rest of the main cast is just obnoxious, deeply unlikable cartoon characters, but they're honestly unlikable douchebags that are funny to watch. Specifically, James D. Bellow's Bert. Bert is probably my favorite of the gang. And that's going to sound like a controversial topic, but I think he's probably the funniest. Yeah, he's like a jerk and everything, but he's just so funny to watch because of how much of a jerk he is. Like, here's one example. He's holding this gun and it's like, I'm going to go shoot some squirrels. Why would you want to shoot squirrels? Oh, because they're gay? He even has a few other funny moments, like when they first enter the group first enters the picture, they stop at that store with the racist owner, and Bert attempts to steal a candy bar, but one of the workers notices it and makes it give it back to them. But then when Bert and Jeff goes to investigate this house, Marcy, who I'm also going to mention, catches up to them. Bert jump scares her, and then, which is basically the dead hermit's cousin's house, and while Jeff and Marcy are talking, Bert steals beef jerky, like the scene I posted on YouTube. Just opens the beef jerky, it's like, I want beef jerky? No, but put it away. Why? Because it's not our house. So? Sure. Once again, he does spend most of his screen time screaming profanity to his friends, begging the question of why he's on the trip with these people. People then. Well, I'm sorry, guys. I'm having trouble to say stuff, but yeah, he's pretty much the big douchebag of the big douchebag jock, or the douchebag idiot or screw up of the group. So now we got, and then we got Serena Vincent's Marcy, who basically lacks any common sense. She's probably the dumbest character in this whole movie. She pisses me off the most. Because, well, hey, as soon as, like, her boyfriend leaves her, I'm also going to mention it a little bit, what's her first solution? I'll make a guy cheat on his already dead girlfriend and let's have sex. So yeah, when they pretty much are infected with the virus. And guess what else she does? When she's infected, she decides to shave her legs. Very smart move when she's already about to be infected and starting to rot. And now we got our other character, Jeff, who is basically, who I think is probably the only smart one of the group. I mean, yeah, he's still an asshole and everything, but to be fair, he's probably the only one that actually has a brain, because, well, they, like, it's not a bad quality. I mean, they just try to make Jeff look like an unlikable asshole just because he tried to ditch his friends once they were all starting to get affected, but really, he's easily the only smart of the group, because this is a flesh-eating virus with no cure, and they were even stupider for trying to stop their bleeding by trying to touch the infected person. So I think Jeff had every reason to ditch them. I mean, yeah, he's stupid to come back to the cabin, and gets himself killed in that Night of the Living Dead throwback, but still, I would have probably done the same thing, because there's no way I'd want to get infected with that thing. No way. The characters, but now onto the unlikable parts of the characters. They lack any common sense. They make wildly bad decisions for no particular reason, like if you accidentally shoot a guy, you take him to the hospital and apologize profusely. If a sick person comes to your door, call 911. Do not attempt to beat him to death with bats and crowbars. And stop taking swings if you're destroying your only mode of transportation. Most definitely don't set him on fire. If your friend is contacting an aggressive flesh-eating virus, locking her in a shed is not advisable. I think Marcy's only defining characteristic is probably her outright annoying, stupid behavior. When it becomes obvious she has the virus, like, once again, she decides random fornication is the only course of action. And what's a natural thing to do when there's a horrible virus that was drilling through her? Shaving your legs was not an appropriate answer. If you see a dead body floating in a reservoir, do not climb down a rickety ladder just to poke it with a stick. Writing characters who are intentionally dumb is one thing, but having your characters do things that no human being would ever do is entirely different in Fox Plus. Even though sensible humans make astonishingly bad decisions. Like Winston the party cop, for example. Just once he gets to Paul, he's ordered to take him to the hospital, but instead, what does he do? He throws Paul's dead body into a river to let him bleed in it. And that's that's actually part of a water factory, because, now that I mention that, because actually I'm going to be getting to a water factory. Why does a water factory, where that water leads to, in the next movie review for the sequel. Oh my god. Yeah, that atrocious movie. But, other than that, I think those are probably my only bad qualities with the movie. I think the rest of the movie is very fun and enjoyable, a good turn off your brain, B-movie guilty pleasure. So if you're just looking for a little fun, goofy, epidemic, zombie-like film, you could go ahead and watch this. I also would recommend, if you're a big Eli Roth fan, if you have not seen this and only seen Hostel, you should definitely watch this. I think this is probably his best work, and here's how I would probably rank this movie. I am going to give Cabin Fever a 7 out of 10. Alright, and that's pretty much my review for the first movie. Now to cover 3 more, which are really bad movies. Yeah, same I already covered the only good one. But anyway, that'll be the first review. Thank y'all for watching. If you like this and want to see more, and don't forget to like and subscribe to Movie Lover 120.